What's the intent of this presentation? From my perspective, I am here talking as a client, a building owner, an institutional investor. And it's really to start that dialogue. And it was really interesting hearing from Stephen and Mr. Ji Ching about what the future of BIM can look like and where it can go. But I think the only way it can really get there is if you have collaboration between owners and then the contractors and the subcontractors and the designers. It is that collaboration, and we're obviously part of that journey. So it's about having that discussion. And I think it's an important discussion to have because I think in the property sector in Australia, as a generalisation, adopting to new technology isn't our strong suit, and I probably put a lot of that responsibility on property owners. If you were to look at how we manage property data and project data, we love Excel. So innovation for us is putting a pivot table in an Excel spreadsheet. BIM is a lot more than that. And I think the other thing that's really been touched on, it's a change in process. It's not just technology, it's process. So I think it's a really important dialogue to start having between owners and the rest of the industry to really drive this in a direction of where we want it to go. Just a little bit about GPT. We actively manage $8.7 billion worth of property across a diversified portfolio. And I suppose what our mission statement is, we want to create and sustain environments that enrich people's lives. And that's a journey across funds management, development, asset management. It's how we pull the whole package together. Now, Sumit gave you a little bit of a background about me. I do have a Bachelor of Building and a Masters of Finance, and the relevance of this will become clear in just a tick. And this is what I've done within the industry. I've been a quantity surveyor, commercial manager, estimator, project manager, development manager, risk manager, sustainability manager. I'm back being a development manager. And what's interesting when you think about all of that, I have no BIM expertise whatsoever, and I've never actually worked on a BIM project, not knowingly anyway. But I'm GPT's guru in this space, which is probably quite scary. But I think that's quite typical for a lot of property owners. We don't really have expertise in this area, and I think it's a challenge for everyone included. So a little bit more about GPT and looking at the asset management business, and I think this is really important because for us, BIM isn't about design, it's not about development. Ultimately, it's probably about asset management because that's actually what we do. That's where we derive our income on an annual basis. It's how we deliver value for our shareholders. So if you look at there, you can see the split of value across the portfolios that we manage. And we're becoming more and more actively involved in the management of those assets. So we've always managed our retail assets that we've had the management rights to, but we've also started to internalise management of our office space. So you start to think about something like a BIM. What does that mean when you're managing that much property? It could be a real game changer for us. And then if you come to my part of the business, we develop across retail, office and business parks. And I'll just quickly go through a few of our most recent developments. In retail, this is a $500 million development up at Charlestown Square. We took the centre and basically doubled in size from about 40 to 90,000 square metres. We've just recently completed the expansion of High Point Shopping Centre here in Melbourne, a project we're particularly proud of. That was a $330 million project for us. We're currently working on the expansion of Wollongong Central up in New South Wales, just south of Sydney. This is another $220 million development. In the office space, we've recently completed 111 Eagle Street up in Brisbane, a new iconic office space for that market. And we've just finished in Sydney with Grocon, 161 Castle Ray Street, and delivering here in Melbourne, 150 Collins Street. And finally, last year, we also completed 5 Murray Rose up in New South Wales at Sydney Olympic Park, which is part of our Business Park Fund. And the interesting thing about all those projects is, to varying degrees, they're all BIM projects. But we only knew that probably halfway through at the end, and we have only had real input into one of those projects being a BIM project, and that's West Kira. And I've learned today that it's probably not a BIM project, it's BIM-like. But that's probably our start of the journey. So that's where we're coming from. Lots of property, lots of potential. And as I say, one mandated by us. So what does GPT and I think generally property owners know about BIM. Well, if I'm the guru, it's clearly not much. We're not up on this space. And I think if you were to ask GPT staff the question, what do you know of BIM? You get two responses. 90% would have no idea. They would just look at you blankly and say, I don't know. And I think the other 10%, probably more from the development space, would say, that's 3D design. And that would be the extent of what we would say BIM is as an organisation at this point in time. So clearly there's holes to fill. Now, why do property owners need to engage with BIM? I mean, do we want to? And the actual answer to that question is yes. Yes, we do. I think within each property owner's organisation, there is a growing number of people who start to see the potential of BIM and how it will revolutionise the property sector. It may not be in the next 12 months, it may be over 5 or 10 years, but it will revolutionise how property is designed and managed. And we're starting to see that. We just don't know the answers on how to engage with it. And I think one of the key reasons why is 6D BIM, something I'm just getting my head around, is probably starting to get to where the game is at for us. And I say that because we're really interested in cost, time and building management. The design component for us tends to not be that important. That's outsourced, it's done by other parties. It's a pathway to the end game. It's not our core business. But that's clearly where BIM seems to have been used predominantly to date, particularly in the Australian market. We see it as a game changer. It's a powerful tool, we understand that. We think it is something that will, as I say, revolutionise this industry. But how we get on that journey and start to work together with the rest of the industry to really deliver that outcome is a real challenging question for us. So I think the question is, why is it not happening here so much as it might have been in other parts of the world? Because it is happening. I've certainly seen a lot of information coming out of America, how BIM is big and getting bigger, and we saw those statistics today. And my understanding it's very big in the UK as well. And I clearly don't know that much because I keep saying my understanding, but it's okay. But it's fair to say that it's not so big here. And I think the question, well, the answer to that is really down below, and that's because it's been driven by architects and engineers to date. We haven't driven the process. I thought the presentation from China was fascinating. There was a property owner driving the game, and that's not how it's being done here. It's clearly starting to come in some of the government projects and some of the healthcare projects, but we haven't driven that process. I think you're seeing the likes of Grocon, who play both sides of the fence, so a developer owner and a builder. They're probably the leaders in that space, but it's, again, because they understand it from that delivery perspective. Your straight property owner, your straight funds manager, this is really strange stuff. So I suppose the question is, if property owners are going to get involved, and we're saying, yes, we're interested, I suppose a key question to ask ourselves as an industry, is it important that property owners engage with BIM? And I'd say it's a resounding yes. It's a resounding yes if we want to engage with BIM like other parts of the world. If we want to really drive it to, I suppose, the nirvana and end game that we've seen presented this morning, where you're starting to see the full collaboration of BIM and what BIM could be, property owners need to be on that journey. And the question is why? Why do property owners need to be on that journey? And my view is it's because on a lot of projects, fundamentally, it's the property owner who actually sets up the framework. We tend to drive what's going to happen from a procurement methodology perspective. At GPT, we have a way we want to procure projects. We have a particular approach to risk management. We have a very rigid legal understanding of what we want to do and how we want to achieve it. And where am I up to? We have our commercial terms we're trying to achieve. So if you're looking at it from a procurement, risk management, legal and commercial perspective, and you want to really drive value out of BIM, I think you start to see this concept of collaboration. We really need to understand that in order to integrate it into how we do it. Because I think that's the only way I'll actually get to that end state position, is if we are part of that journey and we want to see it get there. Otherwise, we'll just put up roadblocks along the way. And your ability to really engage with BIM to your full capability and for us to really get the value out of it that we could deliver will never be achieved. So that's why I think it's critical that property owners do engage with BIM, that we understand BIM, and that we come on that journey. Because it's up to us in a way. We set up the frameworks that will either enable it to be integrated into the whole procurement process, or we won't allow it to happen. So I think that's a real challenge for us, and it's a challenge for the industry. So we started to look at, as property owners, can we leverage off BIM? And will we leverage off BIM, and what can we get out of it? And I'll go back one. As I said before, we're not so interested in design. What we're really interested in is this opportunity to change it from a time perspective, a cost perspective, and then ultimately a building management perspective. Time and costs are crucial for us. Design is critical to the product we deliver, but when you're trying to achieve an investment return for the fund management part of the business, time and cost are the key drivers that determine that outcome to a large degree. And so understanding a tool or a process or a methodology that enables you to really look at it through that lens, what's this going to do for the project from a time perspective? How's it going to impact the bottom line cost of the project? Is critical for getting us to engage with that BIM process. We expect great design. I mean, we employ great design teams and we work with great builders, so we expect that. And the fact that you guys are using BIM more and more to deliver that outcome is fantastic. But for us to really make that, I suppose, return on investment argument and really make that link to financial return, it really is about understanding impact on time and cost and ultimately building management. I've talked about that. So if you break it up into two aspects of a property owner, particularly one like GPT where we develop and then we manage, how is it that we can use BIM? We've talked about design. We see that being done. And we see great outcomes. I mean, High Point Shopping Centre, our most recent development, we completed it with ProBuild. It's a project we're particularly proud of. But you look at some of the design elements in there, they're there because of 3D modelling and 3D design. That's how that's come about. We love it and we think it's fantastic, and that's what we want to see on all our projects. So, yes, we understand the design component and we want to see that continue. I think where we start to get into a really interesting place and where you really start to have the conversations and where they haven't even begun yet is project procurement. And a similar version of this graph went up before, and you've got, I suppose, the grey being how we do things today or traditionally, and then the BIM workflow of tomorrow. The implications of that graph from a legal and risk perspective for a property owner are phenomenal. And the conversations we will have to have internally to actually crack that nut open and come up with the right solution to really unlock the potential of BIM are large and they're challenging. I mean, you start talking to lawyers about changing how you procure your project away from a D&C model where you're just flicking off all the risk, that's how we perceive it to some degree, is a big game changer. I think the potential and the benefit in it is huge. It's huge for the property owner. It's key to unlocking that cost benefit. It's key to unlocking that time benefit. But for a property trust that's fundamentally focused on risk management, to actually change that procurement methodology is a big challenge, and one that the industry will have to work together on in order to realise. The time and cost through the delivery, again, great tools, great opportunity. But again, it's more how you're actually unlocking and changing your fundamental procurement process. High-level programming. This is one that I think really excites us. Staging. When you work on big retail projects and you're looking at bringing on income online and you're looking at how we're tracking about getting that first dollar through the door, staging is crucial. And it's always a challenge on retail projects, and you see how staging is presented and how it's managed in all sorts of confounding, complex ways. The opportunity to use BIM in a way that really unlocks the value of staging on projects is huge for property owners, particularly for retail property owners, where you've got massive amounts of investment locked up until you open at day one, and starting to actually use that tool strategically to really plan how you're going to stage that development and unlock that value for the property owner. That's a game changer. A head contractor who can come to us with a BIM model that demonstrates how they have fundamentally changed the staging outcomes of our project, you're on a winner. That is one of our most important discussions. And from the moment we start a project, the biggest question, every project control group meeting, how are we going on program? How are we going on staging? Because that's the key to our income, and that's the key to unlocking the value. Setting up the next phase, I'll get to that. Clearly we're going to talk about asset management, and that is crucial. So it's fantastic to put all this information into a design model, but what's it going to do for us at the end? We're going to hold that model, we're going to own that model, and we're going to work with that model potentially for the next 15, 20 years. How are we actually setting that up in the design phase to actually deliver value to us? We hear a lot, but what are we actually seeing? And then that whole question of what's the other data that you can start to actually link in with BIM, particularly around sort of sustainability and ESD sort of data around life cycle costing and analysis. How can that actually be brought into the BIM model? Because when I look at it, as a bit of a layperson, it seems like something you could start to quite easily integrate into that whole assessment criteria. It's just another piece of data. I think that's what I've learned about BIM. BIM's about data, not drawings, so let's get some more data in there. So then we come to the asset management side of the business. And this really is, for us, this is the holy grail. I talked before about how we tend to manage property data as property owners, and it's pretty archaic. And as a result, the time and effort we spend on managing asset information is phenomenal. It's a massive resource cost to us, and it's an economic cost to us. So if we can start to come up with a new process, a new methodology that really starts to unlock from day one of operation how you are actively managing that asset, again, that's a game changer for a property owner. And to be honest, it's pitching BIM at this side of the equation that will really start to engage the property owners to say, well, I want to mandate BIM from day one of the project because I'm going to get this at the end. And I can see the value that this is going to derive for me at the end. The rest of it just becomes sort of, I think, cream on top if you can actually really unlock this piece. So, as a property owner, how do we see that the industry is responding? And I've sort of seen two ways so far. Way one is there's a lot of people just continually to push this design barrow. It's all about 3D design, it's about design, it's about design. And as long as that's the continued response and the continued focus, property owners won't engage. It doesn't address our core business, it doesn't give us what we need, and we're going to get it anyway because it helps you guys. So it's not a big sales pitch for us. A, it's going to happen. B, it doesn't help our bottom line. C, it's not core business. Probably the second response, and this is probably just as scary, is we get promised the world. And you know what? It's really easy to promise the world to people who don't know anything about what you're talking about. If I'm the guru, it's pretty easy to sell to me because I have no experience in this stuff. So we get presentations and we hear about asset management tools and we see all sorts of different technologies being promised. And the question is, can they deliver? Because I think that's a real risk for BIM. Because if the industry starts to push solutions that it can't actually deliver, or too many property owners get sucked into a journey that doesn't deliver, there's a real potential that BIM will be, as a brand, will be really badly damaged. And that could put it back 5 years, who knows? And it would be a real shame to see that happen. But I think that's a real risk, is promising the world. And I know of a few projects where you get shown and you get given the sales pitch and you think, oh, that sounds fantastic. And then you talk to the guys who are operating the building, it's like, no, it doesn't work like that. That's not the reality. And if you want to unlock the Holy Grail, don't overpromise and underdeliver. Because I mean, the size of that pie is so big, it's not something you want to get wrong. If you actually can under-promise and over-deliver, that's the way you want to go. Because a property owner will then forever be on that journey and will never look back. So that's, I think, a real key element to what we're talking about here. So what's next? I think there's two things that really need to occur. I think one's on the property owner's side. That's me. We need to go back to school. We actually need to upskill in this space. We need to understand what it means. We need to do what Lendlease have done and actually have a BIM business plan. We actually need to know what it is we're trying to get out of this and understand what it actually means. And not just throw the word around, put it into the odd specification. We really need to understand it and start to leverage off it and say, actually, this is what we see it as. This is how we're going to use it. This is how we're going to move and grow with it. And then I think the challenge is for the rest of the industry is to really focus on, if you want to bring property owners on the journey, focus on what it is we want. Don't keep talking about design. Design's great, but start to really focus on some of those other elements. How are you going to really manage the project from that cost and time perspective? How are we going to work towards the asset management holy grail, building management holy grail? Start to engage with property owners in that language and in those concepts. And I think you'll then quickly start to see property owners really engage and clients say, yeah, this is the way to go. I think government will always head down that path, but I think the Australian sector is different to some others when it's actually very private sector led, and we need the private sector here really driving this outcome. And I think there are two key elements that need to occur. So it's been great to have the opportunity to present here. I suppose the final question is, and this is the challenge I leave us with, what do property owners need in BIM to make it the industry standard? Thank you.